We're live, we're live, we're live. Yes. Let me see what's going on. Why does it look like that? I don't know what's going on. Front camera. Is that what I want to know? I want the front camera. Listen, we are live right here. I'm not sure what's happening with this screen, but we are live right here for yes, we are live right here for the good fight. Thank you so much for joining us for the good fight. I feel like I got to figure out what's going on with this other. I will be right, but let me see what's going on with this other thing over here. I don't think I fixed it, but I was trying to fix whatever's going on with this screen. But hopefully you all can see me right here. I can see myself, and I'm so glad. Thank you for your patience. Just trying to figure. I think I had you on the anyway. Thank you for joining us for the good fight. We are live right here every Tuesday night from 7 to 8 o'clock p.m. And I always look so forward to the conversation. I'm grateful for you to be in this space with me. It feels so good to know that I am not here alone, just trying to figure out how do we embody our faith. Those of us who say that we are faithful, those of us who believe that there's something out there that's bigger than us. Even if we don't name ourselves as faithful, we live as people who are trying to be good humans. We are trying to treat people right. We are trying to exude good energy, positivity, like all of those things. Like, how does that show up in our interactions with each other? That's what this conversation is about. And I'm so glad that you are here for it. Thank you so much. I'm grateful. I always want to start in the spirit of gratitude and in the spirit of oneness. And so I want to greet you in the Zulu tribal greeting of Sawubona, which reminds us that we are interconnected. We are inextricably connected by our humanity, regardless of how we feel about each other, regardless of what we think about each other, regardless of what we've been conditioned to believe about each other. We are humans and we are humans together, and there is nothing that we can do about that. What we can do is reimagine what it means to coexist together as humans. And how do we coexist in a way that liberates us all? Because if one of us is not free, then none of us are free. And so our freedom is bound up in each other. And so I greet you in that spirit of oneness, in that spirit of the human family, in trying to wrestle with our faith. If this is your first time joining us tonight, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you join us every week, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you join us when we are not live, welcome, welcome, welcome to this space. There are ways that you can engage with the good fight every single time that we show up in this space. One of the ways that you can engage is to locate yourself in the story. I'm always going to pull something. I tried to get rid of the Bible. Do y'all remember that? I was like, if we're going to try to have a deconstructed faith, like, let's not even use the Bible. And that did not work out. So I'm always going to pull a text, a pericope, a portion of what is written in the book that we call the Bible. I'm always going to pull from that as a way of sourcing our conversation. Like, what is guiding this conversation? What is rooting this conversation? What led me to this conversation? And sometimes that's not even actually the way it works. I don't start with the text. I start with life, and I find the text that supports what's happening in life, right? So that's how that works. And so we are going to be looking at First Peter chapter 5. I think I wrote on the flyer verses 1 through 7, but we can really just work with verses 5 through 7 for the purposes of our conversation. And so you can locate yourself in this story as we read these two verses, as we think about what this means, as in the stories that I tell that surround the text from the Bible. Because I'm going to tell a story about how I got here. I'm going to tell you a story about I'm going to tell you somebody else's story. Like, where are you in these stories? How are you showing up in them? That's the first way that you can engage. Second way that you can engage is to recognize that you do not show up in the story, that you are actually looking at this story through a window. This is somebody else's experience that you know nothing about. However, you are open to receiving the story as the gift that it is. And then whatever the story does inside of you, however the story works its way through your body, then you can wrestle with that when we are no longer in this space. Like once I hit end stream and I leave the studio, then whatever the story, however the story is at work within you, then that's something that only you will know unless you choose to share it. And you can absolutely share it with me. You can hit me up at 228-236-7440, 236-7440. You can hit me up on Facebook Messenger, like however you want to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have the conversation offline. A third way that you can engage with a good fight is to walk through a door. So hopefully this is not the end of the conversation, that at 8 o'clock, we don't just shut it down and we're through with that until next week, but that there's something about the conversation that my cousin just called me back a few minutes ago. She was like, why did I call you? Oh yeah, I was still thinking about what we talked about earlier. And so that's what it means to walk through a door, to sit with the story, to sit with the conversation. And then if it leads you into a direction to learn more, to research more, to have more conversation, to engage in more dialogue, then you follow that. You follow that path, you walk through that door and see where it goes. And if you are like me, like when you start researching, you're researching about A, and 4 hours later, you're on Z, and you forget, like, how did I even get started? Like you're so engrossed that you don't even remember what got you started on the path, and yet the path is still rich and robust and enlightening and worth it. And then finally, you can engage by commenting. You can comment live in this space. You can comment offline. You can comment on the phone. You can comment through text. Whatever that is, whatever mode of communication works best for you, I'm here for it. So welcome, welcome, welcome again. Thank you so much for joining us for the Good Fight on this Tuesday night. I said last week that I did not want to bind myself to these sins of Christianity because I don't want to ever feel like I'm forced to do something. And I don't want that feeling of being forced to create a conversation that really isn't authentic, because I'm not really feeling it. I feel like I gotta do it, so let me just come up with something. Like, I don't operate that way. I want to always operate in a free-flowing spirit, right? A spirit that's connected to a higher spirit, and that I feel like I'm in on the flow of that spirit. And so I wasn't sure that we were going to continue to talk about the sins of humanity, sins of Christianity, but yet again, here we are. So I want to remind us that when I say sin, I'm talking about the definition of the word that's rooted in the Greek text that says that sin means to miss the mark. I just confessed to a friend of mine the other day that sometimes when I preach sermons, I miss the mark, because my intention is to deliver a particular message about what I believe about God through Jesus Christ that is sustained by the Holy Spirit. But it doesn't always work out that way, because sometimes the message that I hear is for me. It's not for the congregation. And so because I misunderstand that and I preach it to the congregation, they don't necessarily get it because the word was for me. Sometimes that happens. Or sometimes I'm thinking that I'm going to go in one direction. I show up in the space, I let go, and I end up in a different direction. And I'm like, I'm not sure how I got here. This is not what I planned. And so I miss my mark. And so I don't think that there's anything wrong with sinning in that way. And that is the way that I am offering to us to consider sin, not as anything that separates you from God. It's not something that erects a barrier between you and God. It is simply an acknowledgement of the goal that you set for yourself. You do not accomplish it at that time. Doesn't mean that you won't accomplish it tomorrow or 2 weeks from now or 6 months from now or 6 years from now. It just means that in the time that you allotted for yourself, you did not reach your goal and therefore you have sinned. And then when I talk about Christianity, I'm talking only about Christianity as a system of religion that has been corrupted so that it is used to, it might not even be corrupted. When we talk about the system of white inhumanity, a lot of times people will say the system is broken, but you will hear a lot of us say, no, the system is not broken. It is working exactly as it is designed to work. And so even the system of religion is working as it was designed to work, to bind you to doctrines and theologies and convictions and beliefs and ideologies so that you will adhere to them and you will hold fast to them at whatever cost, at the cost of your family, at the cost of your livelihood, at the cost of your own common sense. Like none of that matters in the face of the system. The system just wants you to do what is necessary to perpetuate it. And so that design of control, that design of conditioning, that design of indoctrination is what I am challenging. I am not at all challenging a personal relationship with whoever it is you believe is bigger than you are in this world. Whatever it is that you believe gives you the strength that you need, gives you the guidance that you need, gives you the knowledge and the wisdom that you need to move forward in your life to achieve whatever your abundant life is. Like, I'm not challenging that at all, but I am challenging a system that requires you to check certain boxes in order for you to feel like God is okay with you and God is pleased with you. I reject that 100%. And so when I'm talking about the sins of Christianity, how that system of religion misses its mark in speaking to those of us who are trying to live a life that is just and fair and equitable and peaceful and inclusive, like how that gets in our way. Like, so that's what I'm challenging in this space. So I just want to make sure that we are clear on that so that nobody walks away thinking that I'm saying you should not be a Christian or that it's something wrong with your faith. I'm not saying that at all. I'm asking us to reimagine what that faith looks like when you start to try to live into all of that control, because you're gonna run into a problem trying to live into that faith. That's exactly what happened. That's why we have the New Testament, right? And at the Old Testament, when we think about the Ten Commandments that were given to Moses up on the mountain, even after he shattered them because he's human and he was trying to deal with the people that were getting on his nerves, he gets the Ten Commandments a second time, and it's 10 commandments. There are 5 of them that talk about the relationship between a human and God, and then there are 5 of them that talk about the relationship human to human. And so when you put those together, it creates the symbol of the cross. And he ended up with just 10, but the people reworked it and ended up with like 632 laws based on those 10. Like, wait, what now? And let's not judge them because we do the same thing. In the New Testament, it says there's only one law, right? Like to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your mind, with all your soul, and in some cases with all your strength. And to love your neighbor as yourself. Like, that's it. That's it. And then we've come up with this whole, but you can't, you got to go to church. You got to go every Sunday. You got to give your tithes. You got to sing a hymn. You got to pray a prayer. You got to wear certain clothes. You can't wear certain makeup. Like, we've turned it into much more than that. And just like with the Old Testament, they could not adhere to the very laws that they themselves set in place. And so they needed grace to absolve them from trying to live into this law that they set up that just simply did not work practically as for humans. Like if you was a God, maybe you could do it, but we are not gods in that sense. We are human. We are limited by our humanity. And so once they created all of those 632 laws that they then bound themselves to, they found out that they could not do that. And so they needed grace to come in and say, it is okay. You no longer have to live by all of these rigid rules that you have concocted for yourself. There is a person who will grant you the grace to be free in your humanity, to be free with your limitations, to live into your created, the created vision for you, which is not to be perfect at all, which is not to be Jesus at all, but to be a force that can be reckoned, a force to be reckoned with in this world, in this world that challenges the world as it is, because that's what Jesus did as a revolutionary. He challenged the systems of the day, and he was not afraid. He was unafraid. He was unapologetic. And so you are now under this grace that allows you the freedom to know it is okay to challenge, and that is what you are called to do. When you see injustice, you are called to challenge it. Right? You are expected to challenge it at whatever, by any means necessary. And many of us are not doing that because we are caught up in the system of religion that does not free us up to speak truth to power, so to speak. And so we're talking about the sins of Christianity, and today the sin that I want to talk about is humility. Sometimes when I hear myself say stuff, I can also hear people being like, "What? Like, how is that a sin? Like, what is that?" Surely you're not going to push back on that. But let me tell you how I got here to talk about humility as a sin. I was watching Come Dine With Me, and I'm also, in between watching Come Dine With Me, I watch Fatal Attraction. So I go from a cooking show to a crime show, from a crime show to a cooking show. And in the midst of that, there are these commercials, because I'm not paying for any kind of ad-free streaming service. The commercials don't bother me at all. In fact, my mother used to tell the story about how I wouldn't even be watching TV as a baby, like as a toddler. I would be in another room, but I would hear the commercial, because even now the commercials are louder than the show that you're watching. If you just pay attention to it, when it's time for the commercial, the volume on the TV itself, it's something that's designed, it's part of the design to get your attention. And so I would hear the commercial, I would come running from whatever room I was in order to watch the commercial. But if I'm just a toddler, so by the time I get there, the commercial is off, and it didn't faze me at all. I was doing it over and over and over again. They would just laugh at me because I never would watch the commercials. And so I've always been intrigued by them. And so I'm listening to these commercials, and if you binge watch, or if you watch the same channel over and over again, you see the same commercials over and over again, to the point where I can almost say some commercials verbatim. Like I know the jingle, I can sing the song because I've watched them so much. So this particular commercial that comes on is about Josh Cellars. There is a brand of wine that is called Josh, Josh. It's written in a beautiful cursive writing on a white kind of parchment sheet of paper. It's not white, it's more of a eggshell. No, it's not even more of an eggshell. It's more of a beige kind of taupe kind of color. And then it's attached to a what looks like a black bottle, because the wine is inside. And this is red wine that he is promoting, because when he first started, his only goal was to produce Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's red. And so this commercial comes on about Josh Cellars. There's this man who created this line of wines and named them after his father. So it's like a legacy. It's like I don't want to say it's a legacy if it's for his father, but it's an homage to his father because of their relationship. And when he's talking in this particular commercial, because there are several commercials, you can look them up. Oh, as a matter of fact, I think I might be able to play the commercial. Let me see if I can play it.
When I started Josh Cellars, it was humble beginnings.
My wife Dee and I took out a second mortgage to make the first vintage.
I was sleeping on a friend's couch and selling wine out of the trunk of my car.
These are beautiful.
At times, I thought about giving up. Then I'd think about how much all of you have helped me. I couldn't let you down. Today, the dream has become a reality. Josh Sellers is loved by so many, and that's thanks to you. I'm so grateful. Cheers. Cheers.
I'm kind of excited because I'm like, I finally figured out how to play a video because I've been trying to do that for so long. And then on my phone, I turned it so that it would, like cover the whole screen, but then it messed it up on this screen. I was using my phone. So I'm going to try to figure that out. So it wasn't the best job, but, and I don't want to play it again because I don't want you to have to try to see it like that. But the name of this particular commercial, because you can look it up, it's Josh Sellers, Cellars. If you're looking at the closed caption, they spell it wrong. Don't get me started on people who are typing for closed caption. But he talks about these were humble beginnings. He's like, we started with humble beginnings. And so I stopped for a moment right there, just with the word humble, which is related to the word humility. And I'm like, what do you mean that this is humble beginnings? Like humble, wherever you fit on that spectrum is fine with me. Like, what does that mean? What are you saying? And so I started to think about how presumptuous he's being in this conversation, even though he's simply telling his story. This is his story about how he got started with this line of wines that he is named after his father, and he got started with them with his wife. And he says in the story, he said, we started with humble beginnings. My wife Dee, my wife Dee and I, we took out a second mortgage. And I said, wait, let's just stop right there. In order for you to take out a second mortgage, that means you have to have a primary mortgage, which means you have to already own a house. Right? So when you say this is humble beginnings, you are assuming that for the majority of the people in the world, or probably for everybody in the world, to own a house is normal. Like, we had a house and we decided to take out a second mortgage. Like, wait. Let's just back up and talk about the fact that not everybody owns a home. And then we can talk about the fact that it's not because everybody doesn't want to own a home. Like, there are systems in place that are systemic, that are institutional, that are discriminatory, that fix it so that there's a certain group of people, there's a certain population of people, not necessarily a certain race of people, not necessarily a certain ethnicity of people, but there's a population of people to which home ownership is not a path. So for you to just say, oh, we started with humble beginnings, we took out a second mortgage, you are glossing over the fact that you have your own home. You got a primary mortgage. And when you say you have a second mortgage, in order for you to get a second mortgage, that means that you have to have enough equity in your home from your primary mortgage to create the opportunity, to create the path for you to now have a second mortgage. Because to get the second mortgage, it's like a formula. You have to take the market value of your home, and you have to subtract like how many months of mortgage you still owe, and then whatever that remaining number is, that's how much equity you have in your home. So first of all, let's think about market value. How is market value how is it calculated? It's calculated in this world in which we live in the United States of America. It might be globally. I don't know. I don't live globally. I just travel globally. But in this world, that means that you have to be in a neighborhood where your property is appreciating as opposed to depreciating. Now, those of us who live in what they call the hood, those of us who live in what they call the urban, like whatever it is, whatever word they use to talk about those areas that are of lesser income, like they're of less value, not because they really are of less value, but they've been zoned, they've been redlined, they've been created as these places that do not hold as much value as homes in other places. Then if you have a market value that allows you to have this kind of, to create this kind of equity in your home, that too is something that has to be taken taken in consideration when you're talking about, oh, these are just humble beginnings. And what do we mean when we say humble? Well, I don't want to have pride in this. There's no arrogancy in this. I don't want to boast. Like, I just want you to know that I am simply trying to be a good person in the world. Like, these are the kinds of feelings that the word humble creates in folks when you hear them say this. So he's not talking about the fact that he's privileged enough to have a home where he can take out a second mortgage. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that he's privileged enough to live in a neighborhood where the market value of his home is high. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that he's privileged enough to have lived in this home long enough to have a lesser amount of mortgage payments to make, which creates a high enough equity for him to draw from in order for him to create this new business venture that he has in mind. And so he's like, well, my wife Dee and I, we took out this second mortgage. And then the second mortgage that you have, the interest rate on the second mortgage is higher than the interest rate on your first mortgage. So again, think about the economic stability that you have to have, the financial favor that has to be at work in your life to be able to have this second mortgage where he's talking about, oh, these are just humble beginnings. And I'm like, dude, I just don't think that you are stopping long enough to put your story in context of the overarching story of what's happening in our world. Now, is he responsible for everybody's story? Absolutely not. And I'm not suggesting that at all. But if you're going to tell the story, own the fact that you are in a privileged position to be able to have a home where you have a primary mortgage and to be able to take out a second mortgage on this particular home that you already have because you've been in it as long as you've been in it. And I really wish that I could talk to him because I want to ask him, like, how did you get your home? I remember when I was a pulpit pastor and I was pastoring at a white church, and more than one couple that I married, that I officiated their marriage, the gift that they received from their parents was a home. Like, in some cases, the parents would buy another home for them, move out of that home and leave that home for the children. So they are entering into a marriage without a mortgage payment. Like, do you know how huge that is for a newlywed couple to not have to worry about paying mortgage? The house is already paid for. Like, that already puts you in a position to be able to do so many more things with your finances that folks without a home cannot do. And so I'm not blaming him for his story. I'm not saying that he's responsible for anybody else's story, but we do have to begin to think about how our story impacts the lives of other folks. Because remember, the Sawubona says that we are interconnected. Whatever is happening to you impacts my life, regardless of who you are and regardless of how you got there. Hey, Takia. I have missed y'all. Don't get me wrong. I was glad to be on. I really didn't think about it as a vacation, but I guess in a way it was a vacation. But I was gone for 2 weeks, y'all. 2 weeks. So I'm glad to be back. How are the boys? I'll be excited to hear about the children. And so here he is talking about these humble beginnings, and yet he has a home, yet he's able to take out a second mortgage, yet he's able to make payments on the second mortgage that are at a higher interest rate than he was making on the first mortgage payment. And all of this is a risk, right? To get a second mortgage, it's a risk because all the payments that you're making still have to go to the first mortgage. You still have to pay that one off before you satisfy the second one. So you got to make sure that you're making these payments. And then it's also, even though it's a risk, it's also a reward in it because the second mortgage is not, the interest rate is higher than your first mortgage, but it's not as high as if you would get a personal loan, nor is it as high as you would get a credit card. So there is some reward to being able to get that second mortgage, even though your interest rates are higher. So for you to be able able to have to take this economic step for your life and to go into this new venture that you have, this new passion that you feel on the inside. Like, how is that humble? How is it? What's humble about that? She said, those boys are good. They went to brunch on Sunday while Dad was DJing. Of course they stopped it. Were they dancing? Wait a minute. What kind of brunches y'all having on a Sunday and y'all got a DJ? What? Wait, is this related to the church? this my kind of brunch. I don't think I've been to a brunch where there was a DJ. What's up? Y'all doing it big. Y'all are doing it big. And so when I began to think about this conversation that he's having about his humble beginnings, like totally not thinking about privilege at all, totally not thinking about the people who are not able to position, who are not in that position of privilege. And then we say that he's humble. He says, well, I can only do this because of you. That's when I said, oh, I can lift this up out of the context of it being a financial story, or it being a story about new ventures, or it being a story about taking a new path and a new season in your life. And I can now apply it to the church, because many of us have been taught that in order for us to really be faithful, especially as Christians, because I'm a cradle Christian, that's what I know better than anything else. I'm not sure if other faiths work in this way, but in order for you to really be the kind of Christian that you are called to be, that you were created to be, that you were destined to be, that you were chosen to be, that you were predestined to be, then you have to be humble. You have to humble yourself. And that brings us to the text that comes from First Peter chapter 5. I'm going to go ahead and read verses 1-7 since I've got them up here. I don't want to say forget about these verses, but since I have them up here, I'll go ahead and read all 7. But we're going to focus on 5-7. So we say, oh yes, local restaurant called Pangea. Every brunch spot in Dallas has a DJ. That's just how they get down. I did not know that. I don't know if it was like that. Well, I didn't go to brunch when I was living there. I was so holy. I was so studious. I ain't have time for it, but I wish I had. Maybe they do have a DJ here for brunch. I'm gonna look into that. See if we got DJs for brunch around here. I don't know. And so I want to pull up on the screen First Peter chapter 5, and I've got to read verses 1-7. And I want us to no longer think about Josh as a person, because this is not about him. I'm not bashing this man's life. It's about this idea of what it means to be humble, and what that and how that positions us in this overarching story of what it means to be faithful, and how that shows up for other folks. Because right now, if I'm just thinking about Josh's story, one could say that he's, he's a little tone deaf. Like, one could argue that he's a little tone deaf because you are acting like this is no big deal. Like, you are such a lowly person that that all of this just happened to you. Like, oh my goodness, I couldn't have done it without you. Like, I'm just this not poor, but I'm just this genuine person who just wanted to do something for my dad, and it just worked out. Like, that's not how it goes. That's just not how it goes. And so let me pull this up for us. It is First Peter 5. Oh, I did get rid of 1-4. Okay, I didn't realize that. I thought I had all 7 verses. So this is the New International Version. I left it up there for you so that you will know. And because I think last time I said it was the Easy English Version last week, and it may have been the Living Bible. So I'm like, look, don't let me get it twisted. Here it is for you. This is the New International Version, and here's what it says, verses 5-7. In the same way, you who are younger, submit yourselves to your elders. All of you, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I want to read that again, verses 5-7 from 1 Peter chapter 5. In the same way, you who are younger, submit yourselves to your elders. All of you clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. The question that has to be asked in this moment is, what do you mean by humble yourself? What does that word humble mean in this context when we're saying humble yourselves before God, before the mighty hand of God? What does that mean? And so in this context that we have, this biblical context of looking at the word humble as it relates to the word humility, then we're saying that you have to realize that you are nothing. You have to realize that you really don't have any worth. You really don't have any value unless it is given to you by God. And God only gives value to those who humble themselves, who realize, who recognize that you are nothing without me, that you need me in your life to save you. You need me in your life to guide you. You need me in your life to control every aspect of your being, or else hell will be your home, because you can't do it by yourself. And so I need you to come down off of whatever this hill is that you are living on, that gives you any idea that you are somebody, because you are nobody in Christ. Christ makes you everything that you are. So in order for you to be lifted up, in order for you to achieve success, in order for you to gain anything, you have to first acknowledge and recognize and say and confess and profess that you are nothing. That's what it means to be humble. Humble yourself. So once you realize that you are nothing, now you are giving God the opportunity to offer you access to becoming something. And so if we apply this to what happened with the line, I don't even know the man's name, because this Josh is his dad's name. So Josh Sellers, if we apply this, then he's saying, well, I really decided that I'm just a nobody trying to do something for my dad. I don't have any gifts and talents. I don't have any special graces. I don't have any ambition. I don't have any drive. I don't have any determination. I don't have anything. All I know is I want to do something for my dad. And so I hope somebody will make it happen for me. And so he says in the video, he says in the commercial, I'm only here because of you. Like, I could not have done this because of you. And I'm like, well, let's just think about it. Now, remember, he took a mortgage out. Like, you put your mortgage on the line for this. Like, the people around you didn't do that. They didn't give you money for your mortgage. They didn't pay your mortgage every month. They didn't script and scrape or whatever you had to do to make sure you came up with that second mortgage so you would not lose your home. They did not do that. They supported. Here they are, in, as far as we know, based on the commercial, they are around you now that you have accomplished this goal. They are standing around you to support you. But because even in the video, he says, I had to sleep on somebody else's couch. Now, I don't know why he had to sleep on somebody else's couch if he already had a house and he had a second mortgage. I guess it's because he was traveling around trying to get, the money, whatever he needed. So he's traveling. So he was staying. I don't know. Don't let me speak for the man, because that's what he says in the video. He said he took out a second mortgage, which means he has a house. Then he said he was sleeping on somebody's couch. So I don't know. You can figure that out for yourself. And so when we begin to have this idea that we are going to be humble, that we're going to operate in a spirit of humility, it means that we have to debase ourselves. It means that we have to give up any power that we have within our own bodies and offer everything to God. Like, I'm nothing, I'm nobody. What do we call it? I'm just, oh, wretched sinner. That's what Paul calls it. Oh, wretched sinner that I am. Right? That I can't get anything right. I can't do anything on my own. I am useless by myself. If it were not for Christ, I would be pitiful. And that notion then deprives us of being able to reimagine what it means to have the Spirit, whatever the Spirit is, at work within us. Because the Spirit that is at work within us, what we say about it is, greater is this Spirit that's working in me than anything that is happening in the world. So because I am empowered, because I am connected, because I am divine, I already have everything that I need to show up as skilled, to show up as the expert in the space, to show up as the one who has the answers, to show up as the one who can make the decisions, to show up as the one who can resolve the conflict. I'm not showing up saying, oh, I ain't nobody. Like, who does that really? I know that's what our faith is asking us to do, is conditioning us to do, is to program us to do, is to say, oh, I'm nothing. I'm showing up as if it, how do we do it? Somebody says, hey, how you doing? I'm blessed and highly favored. Somebody says, oh my goodness, your song was great. You sounded well. Oh, give glory to God. Like, who, what? Okay. Was God singing? You said, okay, well, God strengthened me to sing. Okay, well, then you had the strength to sing. So when I'm saying that thank you for your song, it was great, then I'm thanking you because you're the one that was singing. Now, you say I'm empowered by God, so I couldn't have sung without God. Yeah, you could have, because there are plenty of people who are singers, who are instrumentalists, whether it's with their voices or some other, who are not Christian, who are not faithful, who are not godly, in terms of ascribing to a God, in terms of saying that believing in some kind of higher power, who are just as gifted, right? Like everybody who's on the charts, who's number one on the charts, ain't no Christian, ain't no Buddhist, ain't Jewish, ain't no Jehovah's Witness. They are people who believe that they have been gifted with the ability to produce this sound through whatever instrument they are using, and they trust and they are confident in what their hands and their bodies can do, and they go forward in that confidence, and they create this space in the world for themselves because it lives within them. They don't have to give it away. They don't have to denounce themselves. They don't have to debase themselves. They don't have to become nothing. Why do you need to serve a God? No, not why do you need to serve a God. Why does God need a servant that is a nobody? Why does God need a servant that cannot, like, you can't have no shine? In order for me to shine, you can't shine. Let's think about it for a moment. If we talk about being faithful as being in relationship with God, we are in covenant relationship with whoever you say your God is. In Christianity, we say that we believe that God says, you are mine and I am yours. So we are bound together by this belief that Jesus Christ is our mediator. Jesus is right here, this is Jesus, and here I am, as here God is, and here I am as a person. And Jesus takes our hands and connects them together, binds them together. Reminds me of the picture on the Sistine, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, where you've got that portrait where God is creating Adam, and so you see their fingers connecting. And so, you know, this is huge, famous Michelangelo piece. And so we say that Jesus is our connector, our mediator, our sustainer, keeps us in relationship. How many of you, when you think about the practicality of a relationship, if you met a person today who said, oh my goodness, I love you. When I saw you, when I walked in this room and I saw you across it, I said to myself, I'm about to get up right now and walk over here and introduce myself. I've got to know who this person is. It's something about the shape of your face. It's something about the brightness of your smile. It's something about the way you walk in the room. It's something about the way you were just sitting at the bar. It's something about the energy that you were exuding that was pulling me. I did not have a choice. but to get up and come over and speak to you. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I was just hoping that you would respond favorably to me letting you know just how much power you have just in who you are. And I want to get to know you. And you are flattered and you find some kind of attraction. There's a little chemistry brewing. And so y'all exchange numbers and y'all start talking and y'all start dating and y'all start getting to know each other better. And then you begin to think about what could it mean to be in relationship with each other. And you're ready to take this step. And then the person says, but I just need you to know that in order for us to be in relationship, you got to be a nobody. You can't be walking around here bold and confident in yourself. You cannot walk around here thinking that you have any value. You cannot walk around here thinking that you are worthy of anything. Everything that you will be from this day on, once we enter into relationship, it's all because of me. So you must now recognize that everything you get, everything you do, it is all because of me. That's the only way this relationship is going to work. I'm not suggesting that some people might not say yes to that, but the majority of us, I would venture to say, would be like cussing at that moment. Like, what? What did you just say? Yes. You need to understand that in order for me to shine, you can't shine. You cannot have anything except what I give you and what I say you can have. Most of us would reject that kind of relationship because it just goes against every fiber in our being that says, so wait a minute, what now? Now, I am the person that you came, that you were attracted to, that you walked up to because you saw all of my greatness. You saw all of the power. You saw all of the beauty. You saw all of the joy. You saw all of the challenge. You saw all of the enigma. You saw all of that in me. And now you're telling me that in order for us to be in a relationship, I got to give all of that up so that you can be the only important person in this relationship. Most of us practically would say, I'm not doing that. Well, then why do we do it for God? And again, that's really not the question, because the question is why does God require that? Because I think that if we ask it that way, if we ask the question, why do we do it for God? We can come up with these answers because the Bible said, humble yourself, because the Bible says you got to give glory, like we could come up with all of these things that you have to, that who is that in the Bible? Like there's somebody, it's blind. Somebody's blind, and in the Bible it says, well, I made him blind so that he was made blind so that God can get the glory. So God, you can only get glory out of blind people? Like, what are we saying? So if we ask the question that way, we can justify it. But if we reverse the question and put the action on God, why does God need us to be nothing so God can shine? Are we really insinuating that the only way that God can be glorified, the only way that God can be God, the only way that God can have power, the only way that God can be present in our lives, the only way that God can do anything for us is for us to be nothing? Does God really require that of us? Does God really require us to be in a position where we lower ourselves to the lowest point that we could possibly be in life, because that's the only way that God can be God? I think if we ask that question, we might stop for a moment and say, I don't think that's necessary for God. I actually think that we are irrelevant to God. That if all people in the world cease to exist, God will still be God. Like God don't need us. Like we're the ones over here trying to figure this thing out. Like God is like doing God's thing. And so when I think about this notion of what it means to live this kind of humble life, where I don't want anybody to think that I think I'm somebody. I don't want anybody to think that I have any talents. Like I don't want to be somebody that folks look up to. Like I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to do any of that. I'm just trying to be. Oh, it's a song. I'm just a nobody. Y'all know that song? Trying to tell everybody about somebody who can change Anybody? We use that language all the time. I'm nothing. I'm worthless. I'm just a sinner. Oh, that one we use all the time. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. So this notion of being humble really means to debase ourselves, to lower ourselves so that then somebody can see God. And what I'm offering to us is that we've missed the mark because that is not necessary. Because God is at work in all of us, whether we acknowledge God's work in us or not. That's not even the point. You ain't got to acknowledge it and God can still move. That's why the scripture says things like, if you don't cry out, if you don't cry out, the rocks will. Like the whole of creation responds to God, regardless of our own behavior. So I don't have to become nothing in order for God to be God. What is a better example, a better expression of God's work within our midst is to recognize our power, that I am empowered by this created one, by creation. Like this creator made me such that when you experience me, when you experience me in my fullness, then you walk away asking the same question that the people asked on the road to Emmaus when Jesus showed up after the resurrection, and they were not expecting him and they didn't know who he was, and they were having a conversation, and then Jesus all of a sudden disappears, and they looked at each other and said, "Did not our hearts burn when we were in conversation with him?" Who was that? That's the kind of expression that God wants us to have, that when we are in relationship with folks, when we show up on the scene, when we show up in the room, when we make our presence known, that people are triggered by our essence, that people are compelled to turn around and take a look at us. People cannot stop talking about us when we walk out of the room. And I'm not saying we're not doing the same thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to put us on a pedestal and the person is not. I'm saying all of us have this power. Imagine what it would feel like to walk into a room where all of us are living into the height of the essence of our divinity. It's got to be magnetic. It's gotta be crackling with fire in that room. You can't help but feel like you just like that the atmosphere shifted, because all of us are at work recognizing that we are talented, we are gifted, we are graced, we are divine, we are powerful, we are all of that. I do not have to become nothing in order for God to shine. I have to be who I am in all of my glory for God to shine, because I am the divine expression of God. And so when we begin to have people walking around here with their head low, and we don't ever want to accept a compliment, and we don't ever want to own our achievements, we want to hide everything that we've done, we don't want anything to show our accomplishments because we want to give everything to God, then I don't believe that that's by God's design. I believe that that's a man-made design, that is the corruption of the faith, of the system of faith, that keeps us from acknowledging what we can do with our own hands. And I'm talking about it in terms of accomplishments, but we can also use these hands to dismantle systems. But if we think that we have no power, if we think that it's not our job, if we're waiting on God to do it by God's self, how is it going to get done? Because we also say out of one side of our mouth that God has no hands but ours. So that means that I'm the one showing up on the scene as God with these hands. The only way that God shows up is when I come into the room with these hands to get the work done. So how is it that I then say out of my mouth, but I'm nothing? If God using me to affect change in this place, how am I nobody? And so with this idea that I've got to be humble, and when you look up the word humble, it talks about having no worth, being of little significance, being of little value. Like that's what it says in the dictionary. And so many of us, when we're trying to figure out the meanings of words, we turn to the dictionary and we take the cue from the dictionary. So if you're taking the cue from the dictionary, then that's what you're doing. You're walking around here like you nobody and like you nothing, like you don't have any value and no worth. Who wants to be in a relationship with somebody who says to you, you ain't got no value? And God doesn't need us not to have value. God is not requiring that of us. That's something that we're putting on because we think it's cute. And then what really happens, and this is what really happens, we wear this cloak of humility like it's cute. We wear this cloak of humbleness because we think it's a requirement, but our hearts don't believe it at all. Our hearts do not. When we go out, when we set a goal for ourselves, we want to accomplish it. The way that this world has conditioned us, we want to be the best of the best. Why do you think we have words like GOAT? Oh, she a GOAT, the great, or he's a GOAT, the greatest of all time. If you are nobody, if you are so humble, how are you going to be the greatest? And I watch competitive shows. I watch competitive cooking shows, and they want to win. Every one of the chef testants wants to win. The man just said a few minutes ago, I would not have entered the contest if I didn't want to win. If I did not think that I had what it takes. You said, well, that's because of God. You think everybody in the world is like, oh, I'm only able to win because of God? No, we put in the work. We study, we research, we train, we ask questions. We do all that we need to do to be at the height of our game, whatever that game is, whatever it is that you are trying to accomplish, whether you are a social worker, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a fire person, whether you are law enforcement, whether you are a cultural strategist like me, whether you are a CEO, you put in the work to show up to be the best that you can be, because that's the only way that we can get work done. It's for us to show up at our best, as our best. At our best, in our best, as our best, whatever word I need to use right there. We have to show up in the spirit of excellence. And that's not because we're nobody. It's because we are somebody, that we are the created ones. All of us are. And the divinity that shines through us in its full power is what draws people to something higher. They see us at work and say, what is it about you? And you don't say, oh, I recognize that I'm nobody. That's what it is that you see in me. You see that I'm not worthy. That's what's attractive. That ain't attractive. I think most of us can agree that when I was giving the scenario about a person who comes up to you, who steps to you because they find you to be beautiful and they want you, they desire you. If you looked at them and you didn't believe that they have, one of the things that you would actually be that would make you attractive, make them attractive to you, is that confidence. I know I'm right about it. For somebody to walk up to you and say all of what I said, you're like, oh, okay, I see you. You bold, you confident, you strong, you believe in yourself. That's attractive. Ain't nobody attracted to somebody who say, well, you know what? I wanted to walk up to you and say something, but I know I ain't worth nothing. And I know I ain't got no value, but I just wanted to come and tell you that I think you cute. I'm not worthy of your attention. You shouldn't even give me your time, the time of day. I don't even really know why I'm talking to you, but I just had to come up and say that to you. Now, you know that would not work. And so I think that we are missing the mark when we are expecting people to live in less than the fullness of their divinity, when we are expecting them to disembody themselves from God, that God is this huge being over here that's not connected to me, that God somehow zaps me with whatever I need in this moment, even though I'm not worthy of it. It's his grace, it's his unmerited favor, and then I'm able to accomplish something. Oh my goodness, it just came out of nowhere. I don't know how, I don't know why God chose me. I don't know how it happened. I don't know what it is about me. It just boom. It's not a practical faith. I'm not saying it's not faith, but it's not a practical faith. It's not something that we can help other people hold on to. It's not something that we can offer to people and say, won't you try this for your life? It's not something that we can make relevant. As a matter of fact, it's something that people wouldn't even be able to grasp. But to recognize how strong we are, to recognize our positions of privilege in the context of stories where other people are not privileged, would then cause us to say, how can I use my divinity? How can I use my divine expression so that I'm not the only one who can come up here and create a Josh Sellers? That I'm not the only one who can get a second mortgage if I need to. That I'm not the only one who can pay a higher interest rate and not lose my home in order for me to pursue a passion and a dream that I have. How do I use all of who I am with force to make it happen for somebody else? That is a kind of faith that I think is compelling, that could actually affect change, that could actually change this whole world, so that God then would be like, that's what I'm talking. Now y'all doing it. Now I see you, because I don't know where y'all been, but now I see you. So that's what I wanted to offer up for our conversation today. I see it's 8 o'clock already. Time flies. Thank you so much for joining us for The Good Fight. We'll be right back here next Tuesday from 7 to 8. Can't wait to see what we talk about then. Bye. In this